My story starts in 1938. In 1938, I was 4 years old. A cute little girl, I'm looking at my picture, perhaps a little bashful, a younger brother and an older sister. And like any little girl, I like it if people say, you're nice, you're good. I like to receive nice presents. And everything is just good and fine. I live in a city called Vienna. Vienna in Austria. Did anybody ever hear of Vienna? Vienna was a beautiful city which received the Jews. Now, if Hitler would not have come to power, I would have grown up in the city of Vienna. Jews were thrown out of Poland. Why? Because there were pogroms in Poland. You know what pogroms are? Pogroms are persecutions of Jews. So the Jews were thrown out of Poland, and they went a bit more westward to Vienna. And that is how my parents came to Vienna, and that is how I was born in Vienna. And one of my earliest memories I have is the following, that all of a sudden we have to move from our comfortable home to my grandmother's house, my mother's mother. And I remember something like this, that we're in the corridor and there are many, many suitcases. There are lots of suitcases and things are spilling out over the floor. And here, maybe I can already point out one of the most important points about my story, because after all, why am I telling you this story? I want to give you points along the way through my story. That's the thing of suitcases. Now, why am I saying suitcases? What do suitcases mean? Yes, that's right. Suitcases means that you have to move. You're no longer in a permanent place. You no longer have a home. You have to pack up things and you have to be on the move. Now, I, of course, didn't know where we were going, because my parents didn't tell me. But what happened was the following. When the Germans invaded Austria, my father immediately fled to Holland. And my brother and sister, my mother and I, were waiting at my grandmother's home for an entry visa into Holland. Now, we had an Austrian passport, but the Austrian passport was expiring by the end of the year. And we waited and waited, and a miracle happened. On the very last day, on the 31st of December 1938, we finally got our entry visa into Holland, because Holland would not have let us in without a valid passport. In any case, we get on the train, and of course we expect my father to wait for us at the border station in Holland. And we get there, and my father isn't there. What happened was the following. There were 2 border stations, and when he didn't see us at one of these border stations, he thought he had lost his whole family. I'm a little girl, 5 years old. I'm entering a room, and I'm seeing my father sitting on the floor shiver. And here he's sitting on the floor, and he's looking up, and he's seeing us. And that was for me, wait a minute, I was really in mortal danger? Because remember what happens in such moments. You never really understand, only afterwards. You can look at a moment and say, wait a minute, was I really in such danger? Was I really in mortal danger? And this entry into the room, seeing my father sitting shiver on the floor, showed this to me. We already have 2 reference points. The first one is the suitcases. I have to uproot myself from Vienna. I have to pack up and go. I thought Vienna was a safe place. It's no longer. The second is the entry into Holland. My father was sitting shiver. I almost wasn't there. I was almost killed. It's a miracle that we were saved. Okay, Holland, a nice country. And I am a little girl. And I must say I have nice memories of the first few months in Holland. In fact, my parents tell me that we learned Dutch very, very quickly, my sister and I. Because you know what happens? Children have a language of their own. We just played on the street, we started to talk to other children, and that's how we learned Dutch. And everything was nice and fine. But my parents already knew that things wouldn't stay like that, so they were looking for a way of getting out, of getting away from Holland. And they heard that boats were going to England. So one night, again I remember, we're packing up and we're going someplace. I don't know where, but I have a memory being on the dock in the Hook of Holland. It's night, it's windy, it's cold, and here I'm standing with my sister shivering, and there were lots of people, there was confusion, and finally we go on the boat. We're already on the line going on the boat, and suddenly there's someone on the loudspeaker who says, there's something wrong with the engine and everybody has to get off the boat. So again we turn around and we go down the plank again onto the dock, and we wait and wait till another boat would come. And hours later, again a voice on the loudspeaker, everybody should go on the boat. And we again take all our belongings and start to go onto the boat. And then here, all of a sudden, I hear my mother behind me saying, no, she feels that if in the last moment they fix the boat, if there was something wrong with the motor and they fixed this in the last moment, she doesn't want to go on the boat. And we already had paid the money, and we started to argue with the man whether we would get the money back. We wouldn't get the money back, but my mother still decides. She doesn't care. We don't go on this boat. We turn around and we go back on the dock. That night, no other boat came. We waited and waited, and we went back home. Afterwards, after the war, we heard that that boat sank in the North Sea, and all people on it were drowned. Now, why am I telling you all this? Because one of the reasons I think we were safe during the war was because of Providence. Now, when I say Providence, what do I really mean? I think what it means is that when you're in a certain situation, you can change direction. You can suddenly say to yourself, wait a minute, I'm not going to do what everybody else does. I am going to do something else. At that moment, you feel Providence. And I think that's what my mother was able to do. My mother all of a sudden realized, wait a second, this is not what we should do. And that's why she decided not to go on the boat. Now, one of the things I learned through the Holocaust was the meaning of law. And I want to tell you a story that will illustrate the point. Now, my father, till his dying day, was terribly afraid of somebody in uniform. For instance, he traveled a lot, and every time the custom officials opened up his suitcases. Now, the poor man never smuggled anything, but the minute he saw somebody in a uniform, he was afraid. And actually, that's a very strange thing, because are you afraid of policemen? What is a policeman for? That's right, a policeman is supposed to protect you from evil things. He's supposed to look after law and order. So you don't have to be afraid of him, only if you did something wrong. Now, my father did nothing wrong, and he was afraid of policemen. I never really understood this. In fact, we were making a bit of fun of my father because of it. But a couple of years ago, I suddenly realized what was the meaning of his fear. You remember there was a television series, The Holocaust. Now, in this series, there is one picture of a train in Warsaw. We see a train station in Warsaw, and there's a train, and there is a policeman, a German soldier, a Gestapo man, who is watching the train. Now, he's watching that people shouldn't get off the train. He's doing his job, after all. But what is he really doing? He's watching so that people should stay on the train, so they should be killed. And then what happens? Somebody comes out of the building, somebody in a white coat, a doctor. He's like an angel from heaven, and he goes over to the train and says, you cannot travel, you're too ill. You cannot travel, you're too ill. And he takes a few people off the train. In the meantime, again, the policeman is the one who is watching that as many people as possible should get killed. What did the Germans do? We are used to the fact that a policeman is somebody who protects you, who helps you if you're in danger. And the Germans took the system of law and order. They used policemen to have people killed. So what does that mean? They took everything we believed in as civilized people and they turned it upside down. You might have heard of the Judenrat, the Jewish Council. Now the Germans decided, we want to organize the Jews and send them to concentration camps in an orderly way. So they decided to appoint Jews and make them responsible for the deportations. Now the Germans decided that they want to send the Jews to concentration camps in an orderly way. So they appointed a Judenrat, a Jewish council, and they sent a notice to all the Jewish families in the town of Hilversum, where I lived, with the following order. You have to prepare a knapsack, and in this knapsack you have to put a towel, a warm sweater, underwear, soap, a toothbrush, so that when the order comes to be deported, you'll be ready. So my father came home one day with 5 knapsacks. And this I remember vividly. I'm standing at the top of the stairs, and my mother is shouting at my father, "What are these knapsacks for? I don't want to see these knapsacks. What do we need them for?" But the Judenrat, the Jewish council, said we have to buy knapsacks, my father said. And my mother says, "No, I don't want to see any knapsacks, because if we buy knapsacks, we're already with one foot on the train. We're already preparing ourselves to be deported. If our order comes to be deported, we'll go without anything. But we won't prepare ourselves. We won't have the knapsacks." My mother understood that you cannot rely on the police. You cannot rely on the Judenrat. And you cannot rely on anybody for instructions. My father was a believing person, and they came to our house 15 times to pick us up. Can you imagine? And once it was on a Friday night. Here there was a knock on the door, and the Gestapo enters our house. And my father decided there was only one way to stall them, to mix them up. So he says to them, "You know something? I'll pour you a drink." And they start to drink, and they're already wobbly, and they're completely drunk, wobbly on their feet, going to the door, because you know what happened. My father had said to them, "Look, it's going to take some time till my wife and children get ready. For the while, you sit down and have a drink." And as I said, here they're already going to the door, all wobbly on their feet. And then my father says to them, and my father told this story till the end of his days, and he was really a character. He said to them the following, "You know, I'm an observant Jew, and on Shabbat, on Friday night, I don't turn off the light. Would you mind to turn off the light for me?" So the Nazi turned off the light for him. Now you might ask, the Germans came to your house 15 times to pick you up. Were you really aware of what was happening? Now, that was actually complex, because on one hand, I remember there was a lot of tension and a lot of fear. But on the other hand, people were saying, tomorrow the war will be over. So everybody was always very hopeful. My brother and sister and I remember, did dress-up parties. We used to have old clothes. We had an old suitcase in the attic, and we used to get dressed up. So we also had a lot of fun, and we played a lot, and we laughed a lot. And in fact, my father learned with us always the portion of the week, and on Shabbat we made Shabbat, and holidays were holidays. So I can't really say that I was very much afraid. On the other hand, what really happened in the Holocaust that I only realized after the war, when I started to read the books about the Holocaust. So if you asked me whether I was really aware of what was going on, of friends and neighbors disappearing, I can only say that I was in a protective environment. My parents, in fact, wanted us to come out of the Holocaust healthy in mind and spirit and be able to tell the story. As I said, my parents were protective. And the way I actually lived through the Holocaust was, what is the meaning of the Holocaust? And we talked a lot of, maybe one day we'll have a state of Israel, and no one can ever do this again to the Jewish people. How did it all end? Very simply. One day, a soldier wearing a checkered beret walked into our house. An Irish regiment liberated us. And that was the end of the war for us. The entire period after the war in Holland, when I went to grade school and to high school, I was still living out of suitcases. I always had the feeling, oh, I won't finish high school. We'll go to Israel. We'll go to America. This is only a way station. This is only a transit. I think what happened to me in the Holocaust in Europe is something that took me completely out of my existence. Now it's clear that we didn't know, and a lot of people didn't know. But what does it really mean to know? Even when we're in a situation, do we really know something? Can we really grasp what's going on? No. One of the things I think we have to think about is what role does Providence play in the life of each one of us? Now for me, I'm a believing person, and I very often feel when I say Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you, God, I feel that God is blessing me. It's like Baruch is like Rachum v'Chanun. The quality of God who can be merciful, the quality of God who can bless me. And that is how I feel providence in the world. God blesses me. God loves me. Now why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you about the Holocaust and constantly connecting it to Judaism, Jewish tradition, myself, meaning of life, providence, because that is actually how I lived through the Holocaust. Things were happening to us, and my parents constantly were asking themselves, what is the meaning of all this? What does God want from us in all this? And I want to tell a story that's also a message and a lesson. We went to the hiding, and we had people, Gentiles, who were helping us. And one of these taught us a beautiful, beautiful lesson, gave us a very lasting treasure. My father had told him that Jews are used to eating a new fruit on Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and make a blessing which symbolizes renewal, both in nature and in man, physical and spiritual. And this was in the middle of the war. 2 weeks before Rosh Hashanah, this friend came. He had traveled about 20 miles on a bicycle with wooden tires, and he brought a bunch of grapes. Now you know that Holland has a cold climate, and grapes only grow in hothouses, and you can imagine the joy of my father and all of us to receive these grapes. So he made a blessing, and at the same time he made a promise that for the rest of his life he would always make the blessing on Rosh Hashanah over grapes. Now you know how great the abundance of grapes is here in the summer in Israel. And my father used to come and visit us practically every year. But my children knew that Grandpa doesn't eat grapes before Rosh Hashanah as a reminder of what happened to him in the Holocaust.